Good afternoon. This is RCB News, and I am your host, Ryan Bowling. I wanted to deal briefly with a subject that is being pushed today, and that is this idea that everything that blacks are going through, all the negative things that they are dealing with, is a direct result of slavery. Personally, I believe that is a lie. And I'm going to be reading a few paragraphs from a book written by a man that some of you already know by the name of Thomas Sowell. It's a conservative economist, well known, and he wrote a book some years ago, I think in 2005, entitled Black Rednecks and White Liberals. Black Rednecks and White Liberals. When I first purchased this book, get a closer look there. When I first purchased this book some time ago, and read it, it just blew my mind. I mean, I was just, my eyes were opening the way about all these different subjects about whites and blacks that I never knew existed. And when I was finished reading, it was like a weight was lifted off of my shoulder. And I just want to read a few brief paragraphs from his book dealing with the real history of slavery. And that is the chapter I'm going to read from. It's entitled The Real History of Slavery. And I just want to read a few brief paragraphs, and I just want to give you my spin on this. Thomas Sowell says here, he says, slavery was an evil of greater scope and magnitude than most people imagine. And as a result, its place in history is radically different from the way it is usually portrayed. Mention slavery, and immediately the image that arises is that of Africans and their descendants enslaved by Europeans and their descendants in the southern United States, or, at most, Africans enslaved by Europeans in the Western Hemisphere. No other historic horror is so narrowly construed. No one thinks of war, famine, or decimating epidemics in such localized terms. These are afflictions that have been suffered by the entire human race, all over the planet, and so was slavery. Had slavery been limited to one race in one country during 3 centuries, its tragic tragedies would not have been 1/10 the magnitude that they were in fact. And you think about that. What's being pushed today, constantly being pushed today by the liberal media, by liberal professors and liberal teachers and liberal politicians, is this idea that blacks are going through what they're going through in terms of negative things because of slavery. But slavery was a universal belief system. It was a universal ideology. And I want to read some more information here just to get you to think outside the box if you haven't started doing that so far. He says here in the second paragraph, why this perverse view of a worldview, excuse me, why this view of a worldwide evil? Often it is those who are most critical of a Eurocentric view of the world who are most Eurocentric when it comes to the evils and failings of the human race. Why would anyone wish to arbitrarily understate an evil that plagued mankind for thousands of years, unless it was not this evil itself that was the real concern, but rather the present day use of that historical evil? Clearly, the ability to score ideological points against American society or Western civilization, or to induce guilt and thereby extract benefits from the white population today, are greatly enhanced by making enslavement appear to be a particular American or peculiar white crime. In other words, everybody, particularly far leftists and liberals, are putting this blame about slavery on the West and America in particular. Every time you turn around, what they're saying is it was America, it was the West, it was America, America, America. I think like in 2020, there was I don't know if he was a politician or some type of a teacher or instructor or professor, I'm not completely sure, but during the campaign, when Trump was running again for his second term, he stated in a speech that, and I'm quoting his words, you all know that slavery was created by America. Now you have to be as dumb as a box of rocks to believe that slavery was created by America. You have to be, your mind have to be so condensed that it's not even funny. Anybody in their right mind that has an inkling of understanding of history knows that that's just not true. I mentioned this in one of my other previous videos, but I'll mention it again. America Slavery did not originate in America. It did not originate in America. You may say, well, somebody may say, well, how do you know? How do you know that America's, how do you know that, sir? How do you know that, Mr. Bolin? America is known for slavery. No, you've been brainwashed and conditioned to believe that America is known for slavery. If you read the Bible itself talks about that the nation of Israel was enslaved by the Egyptians. For 400 years, the Egyptians enslaved the nation of Israel. And guess who the Egyptians were? And I mentioned this in one of my previous videos. Guess what race they were at that time? They were black. So could it be argued that the origin of slavery originated with the Egyptians who were black? And even if the ancient Jews at that time were black or white, because some people argue that the ancient Jews were black, whatever, we can get into all that, but I ain't going to get into that. Let's assume that the ancient Jews were originally black. Let's make that assumption. Like what's that group, that religious group, the Black Hebrew Israelites say. That's right, I said it. The Black Hebrew Israelites say. Let's assume the original Jews were black. Well, their accusation is that America and the Europe have enslaved blacks for hundreds of years and caused all this oppression and destruction among blacks all over the world. But that's just not true, because according to their own Bible that they claim to know, the original Egyptians were black. And this happened thousands of years ago. And if the original Jews were black, then the first group or ethnic group that enslaved blacks were black people, not white people. So that's a lie. Let me read another passage here out of this book. It's on page 112. And Dr. Sowell says, it takes no more research than a trip to almost any public library or college library to show the incredibly lopsided coverage of slavery in the United States or in the Western Hemisphere, as compared to the meager writings on the even larger number of Africans enslaved in the Islamic countries of the Middle East and North Africa, not to mention the vast numbers of Europeans also enslaved in centuries past in the Islamic world and within Europe itself. Now get this part. Thomas Sowell says at least 1 million Europeans were enslaved by North African pirates alone from 1500 to 1800, and some European slaves were still being sold on the auction block in Egypt years after the Emancipation Proclamation freed blacks in the United States. Indeed, an Anglo-Egyptian treaty of August 4th, 1877 prohibited the continued sale of white slaves after August 3rd, 1885, as well as prohibiting the import and export of Sundanese and Aboriginal slaves. So you see right there that slavery was going on. Whites were being enslaved themselves, over 1 million of them. Even after the Emancipation Proclamation that freed blacks, slavery was still going on. So why aren't any of these liberals talking about the slavery that's still going on right now? Why aren't they saying anything about this? I find that very, very interesting. I find that very, very interesting. But I wanted to speak just briefly on that subject. And I wanted to hit on that because this is the prevailing narrative that's being spun in the news and by politicians and school teachers and everywhere you go. It's always about race and the white man this and the white man that. But if you read this book, take the time out to just invest in this book if you don't already have it. Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. Take the time out to just invest in this book if you don't already have it. Read it and trust and believe it's going to blow your mind. It's going to open your eyes to a lot of information that you may not have been aware of. And it's well researched. I mean, look at this. In the back it has, look at all these notes. Back here. Look at this. Look at how many notes this is. Well researched. This is like over, I don't know, let's see. And he has them by chapters. So in the chapter 1 alone, I think in chapter 1 alone, it's like over 100-something references. So take the time to just read, take the time to invest in this book if you already have not invested in it. It will be a great blessing to you, a great benefit. If you all enjoyed this video, please press the like button, make your comments, share this video, and subscribe. God bless you, and see you next time.